Convene, Councilor Jonathan Lambert Melton has an excused absence today, and Mayor Pro Tem Fort is running a few minutes behind, but will be joining us, and we are here to talk about the 2022 Parks Bond update with Shawsheen Baker and Kelly Ham.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, and good morning, members of the council. I'm Shawsheen Baker with Raleigh Parks. And this morning, my engineering services colleague, Kelly Ham, and I are presenting a progress update on the 2022 Parks Bond project. And towards the end of this presentation, I'll be giving a brief overview on the annual Parks Capital Improvement Program supported primarily by the penny tax revenue. First, the bond projects. There has been very extensive and intensive engagement and collaboration, both internally and externally. As you have experienced yourselves, most of the projects after community engagement process were brought in front of boards and commissions and city council for review and approval. So thank you very much for all your input and support on these projects. And most of these projects now have moved into technical design phase with a very minimum interaction with the community members. However, we continue to communicate with them through project websites and social media channels, as well as outreach with the targeted stakeholder groups. We're planning an open house event for spring 2026 to report progress and share project information. As presented last time, a cross-departmental team has been working towards the development of a reporting dashboard to promote transparency as well as reporting on the bond budget spending status. And we're going to take a closer look at the dashboard a few slides later down this presentation. And here the graphic again showing the 4-year rollout for the Parks Bond budget, and we're currently in year 3. Also, as presented previously, there was a funding gap of a little over $21 million between the originally proposed budget and the final dollar amount that was approved by City Council and the voters. We have been working towards closing that gap and have a little bit progress to report today. First, we finally received a written confirmation letter from the grantor for the $8.6 million grant award for Smoky Hollow Park, and it's still conditional, contingent upon U.S. Army Corps permit and review, but that was already part of the project scope anyways, and the project team has been working towards the permitting phase and as we develop the design. And second, we are still working on the environmental review process for the $1.5 million HUD grant for South Park Heritage Walk. And recently we received a $400,000 grant from the Great Trail State Grant from North Carolina towards the Marsh Creek Greenway Planning and Feasibility Study. The Neighborhood and Community Connections Partnership is going strong, currently in permitting phase. We also recently secured pretty substantial partnership with a private developer for the office renovation and activation on Dix Park. In addition to all that, we have received over $800,000 from City of Raleigh Stormwater Program for the implementation of green stormwater infrastructure on some of the bond projects. We still have a couple in the pipeline, and we continue to look around. With that, I would like to have ask Kelly Ham to start talking about the projects.
Thanks, Shawsheen. All right, and we're going to talk a little bit about the project status, and this slide may look familiar to you. We've used it a few times as we've provided updates. So as we go down the slide vertically, we have the Park Bond projects, and then as we go across the top from left to right, we have the phases of the project, starting with early phases like RFQ, planning, schematic design, construction documents, through permitting, bidding, construction, and finally completion. And our progress since our last update to you all, which was in March, is shown in blue. And I did want to note, even if you don't see an entire phase advancing in blue, we are making a lot of progress. And we're going to talk about the projects based on their fiscal year they were funded a little bit here. So for fiscal year 24, we have one project that is open to the public, and wow, what a wonderful project to be the first one delivered through the Park Bond, a resounding success with the Play Plaza. We've got a couple projects under construction, and then Green Road is in the bidding category. A significant number of the projects funded in fiscal year 24 are in permitting. I won't read all of them, but I wanted to point out Biltmore Hills is the farthest advanced. It's in the building permit phase, and the remainder are primarily in site plan permitting. And the remainder of the fiscal year 24 funded projects are in design, as you can see here. And the fiscal year 25 funded projects are also in design. So happy to report all the projects are rolled out and in design or further along phases. We just wanted to briefly mention some of the ongoing challenges. And this is not to alarm anybody, just to say that we are anticipating, planning for these factors and trying to work to minimize their impacts on our project to the extent we can. So some of those challenges are tariffs, bidding conditions and contractor availability to do the work, increasing costs. There are some projects for which we have federal grants, so we want to be extra careful to make sure that we meet all the requirements for those projects. And then relocation of impacted services. So even as we are planning for design of renovation to some of the community centers, our parks counterparts are working very hard to put in place plans to relocate some of those services and to minimize any impacts to programming overall. And so now we're going to talk about the dashboard, and we will see. There we go. Okay. So we last provided you an update on the Parks Bond dashboard at our last update, and we wanted to preview it for you today. So we're calling it the 2022 Parks Bond Spending Tracker, and I'm just going to go over it briefly. You can pick all projects, or you can pick a specific project. So right now we're looking at all of them. It has an interactive map here where you can click on projects. So each of these dots represents a project. And the bigger the dot is, the more bond funding the project has. And then as we go over here, if I pick we'll do this in a minute, we'll pick a specific project, but when we pick that project, it'll tell us what phase it's in. It tells us what is the total budget. So this represents the $275 million of bond funds plus any other donations, grants, or other funding for a total of $325 million here. And then it shows us on the next line, how much have we spent from the parks bonds? So we've spent $55 million. And then it'll give us for each of the projects individual, but our goal is to spend down these funds by December of 2029. And then as you go down farther, there's a cash flow curve here. So so this is how we plan to spend the funding over time. So the blue line is just that projection. How do we plan to spend this $275 million of bond funds over time? And then the green line here is how much are we actually spending over time. So the blue line is a projection based on a curve, and the green line is based on actual invoices and pay applications. So as we go over here, we have some general information about the bonds, and then we have these graphics that look like speedometers, so I like to call them spendometers because we're trying to show how much we're spending. So you can see here, the first one is spending from the parks bond. So we know we have a total of $275 million. And so far, if you see this dark blue, we've spent about $55 million from the bond. And then if you go to the middle, it's going to show us spending from those other sources. So we've got $50 million, and we've spent about almost $36 million. And then if we go to the far right, that's just going to total everything up for us from the bond plus the other sources. So $325 million, and we spent $91. And so we'll just go ahead then and try to preview a specific project. Let's just take a look at Tarboro, for example. Oh. And one thing that you'll know is you have to unclick the Select All so that it shows you that specific project. There we go. Okay. So now that we're on Tarboro, you see our map is focused right into our project location. Our project description is telling us specifically about Tarboro, so we have a note about when the schedule was last updated. In this case, we had a contract amendment that did schematic design through construction, so we're on that schedule. We have an overview of what it is. So this is redeveloping the park, and then some of the key features, the community center, playgrounds, play court, parking, and so forth, and improvements to St. Monica. And then if we go over here, you can see we're in the design phase. Our budget is about $29.3 million, and we've spent about $980,000 of that. We're anticipating being done with construction in January of '29. And then as we look at our projected spending versus our actual spending down here, so again, projected is blue and actual is green. And then as we go over here, our spendometers, we can see again our budget for this project is $29.3 million. We spent about $980,000. And this particular project doesn't have any other funding sources, so you're just seeing bonds. So that a spendometer over here will look just like the one spending from the bond. So with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Shasheen to talk about the look ahead.
Thank you. Next steps. Of course, we're going to continue implementing these projects and continue to pursue grants and partnerships. And this dashboard that Kelly just showed you, we hope to publish that this week. Unless there are any substantial input and comments from the council that we need to address, of course. I mentioned earlier that we're going to we are planning for an open house event for spring 2026, and this event is intended to be a community event with fun and food and music and family activities. And once that date is finalized, we'll definitely share with the boards and commissions and city council and the broader community. The next two slides, I only have 2 slides left. The next 2 slides are about the annual parks capital improvement program, again, primarily supported by the penny tax. Back in fiscal year 2022, City Council authorized to implement a 1 penny tax increase to support maintenance, deferred maintenance, and life cycle replacement. During the first year of FY 2022, 1 penny brought us $7.6 million, and that amount has increased with the current year being $11.6 million. And since then, staff has been working pretty hard with the penny, and we have completed over 120 projects through the execution of well over 200 contracts, and we have expensed $28 million, and currently there's just shy of $9 million under contract waiting to be spent. And here's some snapshots of the projects that are covered under this program. Dix Park building abatement, demolition, and site stabilization. We also have security system expansion and upgrades at locations where there was none, or at locations where there were outdated analog systems to keep them upgraded. And we completed about 40 facilities so far. And then ongoing parks paving, stream bank restoration, playground renovation, and park system upgrades. So those are targeted for again, focusing on maintenance, deferred maintenance, and a life cycle replacement. And with that, we're happy to take questions.
Yep, Councilor Branch.
Definitely. Thank you for the presentation information. Of the 4.187 that is short between that 21 and that 17, I know you said you had 3 opportunities, excuse me, coming forward yet to be secured, but what's the touch point or the date kind of on the calendar that says, hey, if we don't have funding for this $4 million by this date, then projects may be in jeopardy?
Okay. I wouldn't say our projects are in jeopardy, and the grant funding is really to supplement. We're not counting, the projects are not designed counting on the extra funding. The extra funding will just provide extra cushion, extra confidence for us, and also if there's any low-hanging fruit during the projects that come up that could be covered with additional grant funding, that would be helpful. So we're not counting on that money.
Okay, perfect. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Patton, and then Silver.
Hi. My question is around think there's a budget gap on News River Park, and that between what was approved in the master plan and what's available. And I know like funding opportunities are being pursued, but I don't see them reflected here on the slide. Are those still looking optimistic, or how's it going there?
They're not on the slide because we have not secured them. We're only reporting back the dollar amounts that we have secured 90%. And for News River Park, we complete the master plan, and we're looking at phasing to see what we could accomplish with the bond funding, and also, meanwhile, looking for other opportunities. One of the grants I called out on the slide was a state parks grant, and that's something we're eyeing on, and hopefully to apply for this project. And we're also talking with our partners and to hope to bring some private dollars, but they're not secured yet. And if going back to Mr. Grinch's question, if we fail to do everything there, we will face the project and to have it fit within the budget.
And then a broader question, is it fair to characterize that the bond projects currently are on time and on budget? That'd be a fair characterization overall.
The short answer is yes. Without getting into each project, there has been some council directions, to add scope to certain projects that impacted funding and schedule. And staff has been strategizing every time we receive directions from council or from the community to, again, the hope is to get everything under budget and on schedule. But there has been some adjustments based on additional input during the process.
Shashin, thank you for the presentation, and very excited to see how these projects are moving forward. I know on our presentation, and it's, I guess, in beta version before you roll out the tracker, and certainly appreciate it. I know we had talked about a very effective tool we use in New York City, Capital Tracker. This is a suggestion for the future, but I think the public should be aware there's always 3 stages of a project. There's design, procurement, and construction. And so whether in the future, I know you want to roll this one out, would there be an ability of just showing which stage it's in so the public understands what's happening? Oh, it's in the design phase. Procurement, I imagine, is very short here, unlike New York City, which was 14 months. But here, I think it's shorter. And then design, there is some complexity. Just adding that one feature about what percent complete so the public understands, oh, design's expected or estimated to be completed in this quarter. The projects expect to be delivered. So I think that would just be a helpful innovation. But the fact that you have this tracker, thank you. It's very helpful as we go out and members and community ask us about it. We could either tell them go directly to the tracker, or we ourselves can look this up on the dashboard. So I just want to thank you for this addition to understanding how our capital projects go from design to completion.
Thank you for that input. When the team worked on this tracker, this product is intended to be a living document or a living product, and based on, because we have not rolled it out yet, and once it's out there, I'm sure with the passionate people in the community, we're going to hear feedback and input on the tracker, how to use it, and from both the elected officials as well as the general public. So we do intend on improving it as needed. And currently, there is a phase, as Kelly presented, there is a phase showing what phase we're in. There's a field showing what phase we're in, design, construction, but we do not have the rainbow or the speedometer to show that, but we could work with our smart
I just couldn't
IT
play
people.
with it because in the slide it was static, and so I kept clicking. So,
No,
but I understand it's in beta. You're going to roll it out, so I will certainly take a look at it. But thank you for that addition. Very helpful.
So I'll just second Councilor Silvers. I mean, this is fabulous. Like, this is going to be such a great tool. When do you think it's going to go live? I mean, just ballpark.
We have things set up today. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have the links on all the project websites, including the main Parks Bond website. We'll have it set up, just ready to roll.
Okay. Well, I mean, just the interface, the diagrams, the interactivity of it's really, really great. I mean, I do think this then begs, if the Parks Department does this, the affordable housing bond, the transportation bond, we're probably going to need to develop, right, tools to assess those projects in those departments of the city so that we're treating all these big bond issues equally. So I don't know whether we've got plans to do that, but I think that's going to immediately be the next question.
I have to say there has been a lot of efforts. It's just this season to give thanks and appreciations. I do want to thank IT staff and for nights and weekend work to make this happen. And to answer your question, it would be a shame if we only use this one time for this parks bond. And we do intend on, hopefully, I'm not speaking for Marshall, but hopefully to use something similar for future bonds and to help with transparency.
So second question, which kind of goes to some of Kelly's comments about, we know there's been tariffs, inflation, all these projects, the dollars have gone up. And so this sort of suggests that the 2022, when these things were bid, that was the total number and we're just tracking against that number. I mean, at some point, you also need to show where there are inflationary increases, how we're trying to address that. I mean, maybe that's too much to put into the tool, but I also want to acknowledge the amount that the city's stretching. And, in the case of Dix Park, of course, where you had philanthropic dollars, put in an additional $1.5 million to cover some of the inflationary overruns. And you sort of want to recognize the muscle and flex that the city and philanthropic partners are putting in to make sure these projects are actually brought to, to fruition.
Appreciate the thought. Most of the very complicated, large-scale projects, we did have a different delivery method, like construction managers at risk, and who help us with cost estimation from real construction market time, and hopefully, and we're also tracking escalation as well. Every step of the way, we have certain percentages of escalation built. So we're hopeful. I don't want to promise anything, but we're hopeful that most projects will be delivered on budget. But that's why, again, back to Mr. Branch's question, we're still looking for additional funding opportunity for in-case situations. But we're not necessarily increasing scope, even with additional funding. Just hopefully when bid time comes, everything is workable.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Well, I think that is the only item we had on our work session, and we appreciate it, and we are adjourned until the regular session at 1 p.m.